Shalom Mishpacha, it's Courtney, America's Jewish mother. Welcome back to my channel. Figured I'd better make a video in case people thought I was sick or dead or something. So this is a recent reads over the weekend kind of video. I meant to do a Friday reads video yesterday, but it was a long day, it was a long week, and by the time I got home after teaching my classes, I was just like, I can't do this. So a weekend recent reads it is instead. So I did actually finish 3 books within the past week. That's unusual for right now, but I was able to finish 3 books in the past week because I had a long weekend last weekend. It was Labor Day weekend, and then Tuesday was Rosh Hashanah, which is one of the 2 major Jewish high holy days, and I like to not use my computer or any sort of technology during the holiday. I mean, you know, and as far as I can manage it, I still have to like drive my car to synagogue and stuff. But I like to try to not use any technology on the holidays because I feel like it's not in keeping with the spirit of the holiday. So I did a lot of reading on Rosh Hashanah during the day as well. So I did finish 3 books, and I'm currently reading 5 books, so let's go. So the first book I finished was Lucky Jim by Kingsley Amos. This is billed as the quintessential campus novel, and it was originally published in the 1950s. And I ended up giving it 3 stars. I thought it was fine. I didn't really connect to the main and title character of the story, Jim Dixon. I thought he was kind of a jerk. And Roz of Scallydangling About the Books, I think, had said something to me about Kingsley Amos's, like that he was known for his misogyny, and like that definitely comes through in this book's attitudes toward women. They're really only treated as sex objects and nothing else. They're not given any sort of nuance or depth or anything like that. And the one woman in here that is Dixon's sort of girlfriend or whatever ends up like emotionally blackmailing him into staying with her. So yeah, it's not great. At least again, as far as the women characters are concerned. And I just feel like Dixon himself, at least to me as a modern day reader of this novel, comes across like just this whiny guy who feels like, you know, he's above the system, even though he's not really contributing anything of value to society. So yeah, I didn't care about him or his, desires to be with this 19-year-old girl. Yeah, so didn't care. I mean, like, I could see how it was humorous at some points. At some points it was, you know, sort of comic, or just like comic in the sense that something really ridiculous was happening. But yeah, overall I didn't love it, mainly because I did not connect to the central character, and I did not love the depiction of women in this book. So I wouldn't recommend it unless you have a very sort of schoolboy sense of humor sensibility in your reading. So 3 stars. Why didn't I give it lower than 3 stars? I don't know, I guess because like in terms of being a novel, it's fairly well constructed, but yeah, I don't know, I feel like I was being generous to give it 3 stars. Maybe I should go revise my rating to 2.5 stars. But yeah, anyway, so Lucky Jim. The second book I finished this past week was A Very Stable Genius by Philip Rucker and Carol Leonnig, and I was more motivated to finish this over the Labor Day weekend because the sequel to that book, I Alone Can Fix It, came available through my library as an audiobook, and so I kind of wanted to hurry up and finish A Very Stable Genius so that I could go ahead and borrow the audiobook for I Alone Can Fix It. So A Very Stable Genius covers the first 3 years of Trump's presidency, and so I did learn a lot about his presidency behind the scenes, things that I didn't know, and mainly what I learned is that it's like even more chaotic than I imagined or knew, just sort of based on news stories that were going on during the time. I mean, it was even more of a revolving door of hiring and firing people than I had even known, et cetera, et cetera. So it was very informative as far as that is concerned. I kind of, because I read this as an ebook, I kind of wish that there had been like a cheat sheet or something at the beginning that's like a list of major figures who get covered, because there were a lot of people discussed, and so occasionally it was hard to remember who everyone was. So I would have liked to have had something that I could go back and reference for that. At the beginning, because the book starts with like the lead up to the 2016 election, and then like his first little bit in office, and obviously then covers, goes on to cover the first 3 years of his term. But the beginning stuff was all very surreal to me. Reading it now, it felt like this terrible dream that I'd woken up from. And I was just like, wow, I can't believe all this stuff actually happened, even though it definitely did, But then, like, the more and more I read on, like, the closer it got to a more present-day timeline, the more difficult it became for me to read. And I was definitely ready for it to be over by the end. But I did learn a lot, again, primarily that things were even more chaotic than I actually knew. So 3.5 stars. I would recommend it if you can stomach reading about Trump. And I'll say more about the sequel, I Alone Can Fix It, in a minute. And then the last book that I finished this week was Dara Horn's People Love Dead Jews, Reports from a Haunted Present. This is an essay collection. It was just out this past week on Tuesday, Rosh Hashanah, coincidentally. I'm sure that was by design. So yeah, I really liked this overall. I found it compelling, and I found it engaging and easy to read. I ended up giving it 4 stars. So Dara Horn covers a number of cases where she feels like the deaths of Jews are being exploited for profit, while people continue to not care about still living Jews who are experiencing anti-Semitism in real time. So basically that kind of stuff. So it covers everything from Holocaust exhibitions to Jewish heritage sites in foreign countries to blockbuster movie and TV shows about things like the Holocaust, et cetera, to modern day attacks on Jews in the United States, like the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting and the San Diego shooting and a few other anti-Semitic incidents that happened after that. So I really liked this overall. The one sort of criticism I had of it is that she does rely on some sources she relies on some sources for research in these essays, and those are listed in a bibliography or a sources consulted or whatever section at the end. But, being an academic, I'm kind of like, couldn't you have just footnoted that? Sometimes sort of looking through the list of sources, it was obvious which source corresponded to which thing, but, couldn't you have just footnoted this stuff in the actual essays, and then if I wanted to go to that source, it would have been right there, and I wouldn't have had to, look at the end or whatever, so, through the whole big long list. So that sort of irked me, but again, I realized this was published by W.W. Norton, but, Norton also publishes academic texts, so, yeah, anyway. So, again, academic here. This is a very academic criticism that I've just lobbied. So, if you don't care about that kind of thing, then it probably won't bother you. But yeah, I did really like this overall. I did want to read 2 excerpts from it that I felt were particularly insightful points that she makes. And there are 3 essays in here that are called Dead American Jews. They're called Dead American Jews Parts 1, 2, and 3. So this is from Dead American Jews Part 2. Since ancient times, in every place they have ever lived, Jews have represented the frightening prospect of freedom. As long as Jews existed in any society, there was evidence that in fact it wasn't necessary to believe what everyone else believed. That those who disagreed with their neighbors could survive and even flourish against all odds. The Jews' continued distinctiveness, despite overwhelming pressure to become like everyone else, demonstrated their enormous effort to cultivate that freedom. Devotion to law and story, deep literacy, and an absolute obsessiveness about consciously transmitting those values between generations. The existence of Jews in any society is a reminder that freedom is possible, but only with responsibility, and that freedom without responsibility is no freedom at all. People who hate Jews know this. You don't need to read the latest screed by a hater to know that unhinged killers feel entitled to freedom without any obligations to others. Anti-Semitism is at heart a conspiracy theory, and one appeal of conspiracy theories is that they absolve their believers of accountability, replacing the difficult obligation to build relationships with the easy urge to destroy. The insane conspiracy theories that motivate people who commit anti-Semitic violence reflect a fear of real freedom, a fondness for tyrants, an aversion to ideas unlike their own, and most of all, a casting off of responsibility for complicated problems. So I thought that was very insightful. And then the second excerpt I wanted to read to you comes from Blockbuster Dead Jews. And this is where the author goes to visit an exhibition on the Holocaust. And she's very irked that she feels like it's a big exhibit that's full of anonymous dead people who are pressed in service to teach us something. So she talks about how there was a part at the end where there's this video of survivors talking to one another about the importance of loving each other, and that's the main thing you're supposed to take away from this whole thing. So she writes that the Holocaust drives home the importance of love is an idea, like the idea that Holocaust education prevents anti-Semitism, that seems entirely unobjectionable. It is entirely objectionable. The Holocaust didn't happen because of a lack of love. It happened because entire societies abdicated responsibility for their own problems, and instead blamed them on the people who have always represented, since they first introduced the idea of commandedness to the world, the thing they were most afraid of, responsibility. Then, as now, Jews were cast in the role of civilization's nagging mothers, loathed in life and loved only once they are safely dead. In the years since I walked through Auschwitz at 15, I have become a nagging mother, and I find myself furious, being lectured by this exhibition about love, as if the murder of millions of people was actually a morality play, a bumper sticker, a metaphor. I do not want my children to be someone else's metaphor. So, really good. Again, I found it highly compelling and engaging, and definitely if you care about anti-racism reading, because this is a book specifically about anti-Semitism, I would recommend it. 4 stars. So that is everything that I finished this week. So I am currently in the middle of 2 buddy reads. One is with Brian of Bookish. We are reading How to Pronounce Knife by Souvankham Thammavongsa, I think is how you say her name, which is a collection of short stories, and we have read 6, which is about at the halfway point, not quite, but about at the halfway point of the collection. And I sent Brian my check-in message for the first half or so earlier today. So I'm enjoying them so far. They're not like the best short stories I've ever read or anything, but I am enjoying them overall. And then the other buddy read that I'm engaged in right now is with Roz of Scally-Dandling About the Books. We are buddy reading Namwali Serpell's novel, The Old Drift. This is an epic novel about Zambia that traces the interconnections of 3 different families, it seems like. There are the grandmothers, the mothers, and the daughters. So we've read the introductory stuff and the first 2 of the grandmother stories. So I just stopped at page 140 this morning, and I've already sent Roz my thoughts about the first 140 pages, and I'm enjoying it so far. I'm finding that some of the sections I'm connecting to more than others, so I'm curious to see how the other sections will go. And yeah, that's all I'm going to say about it for right now, because I'm not super far into it, but I'm enjoying it and finding it interesting, but I'm definitely connecting to some sections more than others. So I am also still reading The Essential Writings of Waldo Emerson, of course. And as I indicated earlier, because I finished A Very Stable Genius, I then was able to go ahead and borrow the audiobook for the sequel by Leonnig and Philip Rucker, which is called I Alone Can Fix It. And this covers the final year of Trump's presidency. And y'all, this is intense. It is like the audio version of watching a car crash. Like, just when you think it can't get any worse, it does. And I feel like I ought to look away, but I just like have to keep listening to it. So I'm already almost halfway through it, and I've only had it for, I think, maybe a week, not even a week, somewhere. And it's super long. It's like 19 and a half hour audiobook. So yeah, definitely this one has me a lot more invested and interested than A Very Stable Genius. And part of it is just because it's like very detailed. They go almost, it's not entirely, but almost like literally day by day, you know, starting with like the new year in January of 2020, and, you know, that Trump was already hearing things from advisors about how, you know, the coronavirus was a developing threat in China, and he probably should read the briefings on it and start taking it seriously. And he's like, nah, you know. And then, of course, when it actually comes into the States, he continues to not take it seriously and or politicize it, as anyone who lives in the United States or probably anywhere else well knows. But the thing that I'm finding really surprising about listening to this is that, I mean, first of all, I find it surprising how many people tried to warn Trump, both from his own, you know, team of people or people in his party, as well as international players. Like, literally how many people tried to warn him that COVID was a big threat and he needed to take it seriously. So that was really interesting to me. And then the second thing that's been really interesting to me is that, you know, even though I think a lot of us who live in the United States are likely to think ill of anyone who worked under the Trump administration, like we're likely to think, well, why would you work for this guy who's a terrible person unless you are also a terrible person, right? Like, I mean, I definitely kind of felt that way. So maybe other people did too. But what I'm finding is most of the people, not all of them, but most of the people, at least like as it's detailed in this book, we're actually pretty decent, and we're really trying to get Trump to do the right thing and take things seriously and not turn things into political games. But again, he just wouldn't listen because he is a giant child and a giant narcissist and a sociopath. So yeah, that's also been surprising to me, that he really was surrounded by people who, even if they were political ideologues, like they really are decent people at their core who were trying to do the right thing, but were not able to because Trump was just unmoved. So that's definitely been interesting. And then the last book that I'm currently reading is The Devil and Webster by Hanff Korelitz. So I read her newest novel, The Plot, last month and quite enjoyed that. And this had already been on my TBR even before I knew that The Plot had come out. So I decided to pick this up, got it from my library. And I am, I think maybe not quite halfway through, like 40-something% of the way through. And this is interesting. I'm kind of waiting for something to happen. I feel like it's sort of slowed down in the middle. This woman, Naomi Roth, who is president of Webster College, which is a small liberal arts progressive college that has a reputation somewhat on par with the Ivy League schools. Her daughter is a sophomore at this school, and there is this protest over a professor of color who's been denied tenure. And it's a protest by students who are kind of occupying some space on the quad, and they're sleeping out there, and they're like tents and stuff up, and things like that. And she can't really get them to talk to her about it. They keep sort of ignoring her pleas to engage in a dialogue with her over this. But the thing that she knows, and that she can't tell them because the privacy of the tenure process is protected, is that the guy was denied tenure because his only published book was plagiarized. And so yeah, so it's sort of complicated thing that's unfolding, but again, it's sort of slowed down where I am right now, and I'm kind of just waiting for something to happen or everything to kind of come to a head. So I'm sure it will eventually, but I'm enjoying this and finding it easy and fairly engaging. So That is everything that I either finished this week or I'm currently reading. Oh, in terms of a personal update, I meant to say this at the beginning. So this last week was kind of rough because even though we had Monday off for Labor Day and I don't teach on Tuesdays or Thursdays, and Tuesday was Rosh Hashanah anyway, so I took the day off for religious holiday. It was still kind of a rough week because this past week we had our first confirmed breakthrough case on our campus of a professor who got COVID even though she was vaccinated and masking. So that clearly was pretty disheartening for the rest of us to hear about. Now, our campus still hasn't become as bad as some of the other campuses at our school, but it's still not great. So please continue to keep me in your thoughts, and if you are a praying person, your prayers. So thank you for that. So anyway, if you have thoughts about any of these books, I would love to hear that. Please feel free, as always, to let me know that down in the comments below. Let me know what books you've been reading and enjoying lately. I hope everyone's staying healthy and well. I hope you're doing good reading whatever you're reading. And until next time, would it kill you to call your mother?